So what happens when a patient falls in love with their psychiatrist and then takes that story to TikTok? Hello and welcome. My name's Dr. Damon Parsons, and I am the founder of CEAR, Cyber Psychiatry Education Awareness Research. And today we are talking about the TikTok saga, I Fell in Love with My Psychiatrist. Now, you may or may not be familiar with this story, but it is one that touches upon several aspects of internet-based mental health, and so I felt it was appropriate, at least, for me to weigh in. So the I Fell in Love with My Psychiatrist saga begins when the patient, Kendra, first comes to TikTok and delivers a series of about 25 videos where she goes into an extreme amount of detail about a therapeutic relationship she had with her psychiatrist, which she alleges became romantic. And she puts forward the idea that this relationship with her psychiatrist became romantic because he manipulated her specifically in order to develop feelings for him and then kept her strung along.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1.
Now, there are a lot of videos and there are a lot of topics brought up throughout, so I plan to release this as a small video by video series. But in order to start with this, I think there are a couple of theories or frames of reference we need to first understand. So in this first video, I'm going to discuss these two topics briefly that I think are at the heart of this contention. The first is, what is abuse and manipulation by mental health practitioners? And the second is to look at what is erotomania and what is erotic transference. So the first thing to talk about is that mental health professionals, be they doctor, nurse, healthcare facilitator, whatever the title, role or seniority, all have a basic level of care to ensure they are not unfairly manipulating or exploiting patients in their care, because especially in mental health care, people can be extremely vulnerable and open to exploitation. As such, there are very strict boundaries and rules about what sort of relationships a mental health professional can enter into with their patients. So, for example, whilst with other areas of medicine, doctors can enter into a romantic relationship with any former patient, just not current patients. Mental health practitioners and psychiatrists are not allowed to enter into a romantic or sexual relationship with any former or current patient. So as soon as you have had someone as a patient, you cannot have any form of non-professional relationship with them, really. As such, any professional who crosses that boundary with a patient is automatically engaged in some form of abuse. And I have heard what some mental health practitioners have done in the past and how boundaries have been blurred and how abuse has taken place. And so I think it's important to always try and hear out a complaint. Even if it sounds outlandish, it might actually be true, or there might be some truth within it. In terms of erotomania versus erotic transference, because it seems to be two topics that people who are against the idea that Kendra was abused and push forward the idea that this is within her own head. These are the two ideas put forward, but they are somewhat conflated in the discourse. Erotomania is a delusional disorder, so it is a form of psychosis where you believe that you are in a relationship, or that someone loves you who is often very famous or in a very authoritative position. This love is based on no evidence or no material evidence that other people could grasp. It is based on your beliefs and your interpretation of signs, signals, whatever you want to call them. The belief is very often fixed and difficult to tackle because it is a psychotic delusion. In comparison, erotic transference is where you develop romantic or sexualized feelings for your therapist while having therapy with them. And in contrast with erotomania, where there is no material cause, Erotic transference is understood to occur because a therapeutic relationship tends to be a safe place where you can bring thoughts and feelings that may have been difficult, or you may be looking at growing yourself and becoming a different person, often involving intense emotional discussion. All of this almost replicates a loving relationship, and so it is not uncommon for patients to fall in love with their therapists. It is important for therapists to navigate this appropriately, and appropriately does not necessarily mean that they cut contact. It is up to the therapist to navigate this, so either by discussing the issue and bringing it to the forefront and talking it through and seeing why it is happening. Alternatively, they could ignore it, which is not often the best case scenario, but is understandable, and not everyone is prepared to deal with that situation. What's important to note here is that it is not a fixed belief. So the understanding is that I am, or if you are the patient, I am in love with my therapist, as opposed to my therapist and I are in a loving relationship, which tends to be what happens with erotomania. So those are just some brief topics to begin with, and we will start delving into the entire saga in the next video.